is even more outlandish and arrogant. Yeah, it's a sequel. The whole thing is like a pseudo-Socratic dialogue between the delivery boy and the avatar from the first book. It is charity to call this freshman intro to psychology gobbledygook. Like most freshman psych students would write a better and more insightful book than this. I'm not going to punish you all with too much detail, but you can get an idea of what we're looking at here with this passage. And this is, so this delivery boy comes to give an old man a passage. The old man is the avatar, and he's, I guess, going to like pass wisdom on to this kid. So like, here's the delivery boy talking to the avatar. It's for you, he said. That's the delivery boy. What's for me? The avatar replies. The package. I just delivered the packages, I said. My job is to bring them to you. It's your package. No, it's yours. Okay, I said, planning my exit strategy. I figured I could leave the package in the hallway on the way out. The old man's caretaker would find it. What's in the package? I asked. I hope to get past an awkward moment. It's the answer to your question. I wasn't expecting any answers. I understand, said the old man. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I didn't. He continued. Let me ask you a simple question. Did you deliver the package, or did the package deliver you? By then I was a little annoyed with his cleverness, but admittedly engaged. I didn't know the old man's situation, but he wasn't as feeble-minded as I first thought. I glanced at my watch. Almost lunchtime. I decided to see where this was heading. I delivered the package, I answered. That seemed obvious enough. If the package had no address, would you have delivered it here? I said no. Then you would agree that delivering the package required the participation of the package. The package told you where to go. I suppose that's true in a way, but it's the least important part of the delivery. I did the driving and lifting and moving. That's the important part. How can one part be more important if each part is completely necessary? He asked. Now, this is pointless. Like, there's no wisdom to be revealed in this. But also, like, it's like no delivery boy would be like, well, I'm the person. I'm responsible for the package. No, the delivery would be like, look, man, that's my job. I gotta make rent. Like, that's why I gave you this package. Someone told me to deliver a package here. Yeah, like, I have to do this to afford food and stuff. Like, that's why I'm here. That's what drove me here. Is my need for food. Yeah. Like, no, the package didn't make me come here. And like, we're not equally integral. The integral part of this is I need a job, and this is the job that I have. Will you please sign for the fucking package, asshole? Like, God, it's frustrating. In general, I think Scott Adams is maybe the single person who handled the social media era the worst. There were signs that this was going to be the case with him from early on. Having to filter his ideas through editors at comic syndicates and publishers kept the most problematic stuff out of his work. When he was allowed to just vomit his thoughts to people, things got really dark really fast. And an early sign that this was going to be the case came in 2006 when he made a blog post about how he didn't vote because he was too ignorant, right? Now, I don't disagree with Scott there. I don't want him voting either. But he immediately segues off of this into very wild territory, starting with the fact that, like, he's like, you know, I think that the news doesn't provide us with enough context to make a decision. So, for example, I just learned recently that Iran has 25,000 Jewish citizens. And everybody's talking about how anti-Semitic the president of Iran is, but there's all these Jewish people living in Iran. So does that mean that the president is anti-Semitic and I'm going to kill people way, or is he just kind of a bigot? You know, the media hasn't provided me with the context that I need here. And for one thing, like, you look up life for Jewish people in Iran. Like, there's Jewish people who have like left Iran or who still live there probably. You can find like their feelings on the matter. You can look this up. Like, there's newspapers that have written articles about this, Scott. The fact that every newspaper that talked about this is during like when everyone was flipping out over Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran, because he made some statements about Israel. The fact that like every news article on Ahmadinejad didn't like go into detail about life for Jewish Iranians doesn't mean that like that context is not provided elsewhere by the media. You chose not to look into it. And for some reason, from that very strange statement, we veer into Holocaust denial. So here's Scott again. I'd also like to know how the Holocaust death toll of 6 million was determined. Is it the sort of number that's so well documented with actual names and perhaps a Nazi paper trail that no historian could document it down its accuracy, give or take 10,000? Or is it like every other LRN, large round number, that someone pulled out of his ass and it became true by repetition? Does the figure include resistance fighters and civilians who died in the normal course of war, or just the Jews rounded up and killed systematically? No reasonable person doubts that the Holocaust happened, but would you like to know how the exact number was calculated just for context? Without that context, I don't know if I should lump the people who think the Holocaust might have been exaggerated for political purposes in with the Holocaust deniers. If they are equally nuts, then I'd like to know that. I want context. You know what, Scott? You can get context because there's libraries full of books people have written calculating the death toll of the Holocaust. All of these questions have been answered numerous times by both journalists and historians. You chose not to seek that out. It's not a problem that every article that talks about mentions the Holocaust and its death toll doesn't go into detail about how that death toll was calculated, because that's not good article writing. You don't like it would be like every time I talk about fucking climate change, I discuss like how fucking internal combustion engines work. Like, it's simply not necessary context every single time, but it's super easy to learn about how the Holocaust death toll was calculated. And if you were to just have typed into Google in this period of time, how was the Holocaust death toll calculated, you would find answers to this question. And if people at home are curious, the Holocaust Encyclopedia, operated by the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, has a page titled Documenting Numbers of Victims in the Holocaust and Nazi Persecution, which you and Scott Adams can peruse at your leisure if you want. This is not hard stuff. It's easy to find. You do not have to be a historian to learn the basic answers to the questions that Scott is asking here.
It's so blatant. The whole thing is like, no one's covered this means I didn't have the curiosity to go find out.
Yeah. No, man, you didn't look. Like, why isn't the media telling me about this? Well, they did. You didn't read those articles. There's a lot of articles, Scott.
And you didn't want to know about it. Like, I could hand my toddler evidence that if she cleans her room up, she will not trip over her toys. She's not going to read that. She doesn't give a shit. She's going to keep her toys out.
It's like if I bought a car that didn't have a manual in it, and then I drove it and never changed the oil until like the engine broke, and then I was like, they didn't give me the context. Like, yeah, man, you can look up, how do I maintain a car? What does this light on my dashboard mean? What do these noises from my car mean? It's not hard to get that answer. Like, it is not the fault of the fucking car manufacturer that you chose to act like a helpless babe. This is all a really perfect example of the kind of dumb that Scott gives us. He thinks that like saying this, that being like, well, I just want context. What about this? What about that?
I'm not saying it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, he thinks that this makes him look not just deep and wise, but like kind of a cynical prankster wise man, like the Avatar in his books. Like, you just accepted that number without thinking. Maybe now you'll think more about the things you accept without thinking. No, you should actually like try to learn the answers to the questions that you're asking, because they're very readily available, Scott Adams. It's like, I don't know, very frustrating. It's like, I think his attitude is that like when we talk about, for example, Holocaust deniers shooting up synagogues and murdering Jewish people, every article about that should include a digression about like the estimated kill rate during Acton Reinhard and how it compares to the rate of killing in Rwanda. Like, that's literally what I think he's saying, which is nuts and stupid, and he should feel bad. And also, somebody should throw pee at him. Anyway, for the sake of fairness, I should note that at this point, Scott's ill-considered political rants are not always entirely on the wrong side, although there's always an element of wrongness to them. In May of 2008, he wrote a blog post making fun of people who complained about illegal immigrants, and that's a noble cause. There are some cringeworthy lines in the post, like, Mexicans have great-looking skin that resists sunburn. I have skin that looks like tapioca spilled on canvas.
It's like skin Mexican people. What the fuck?
Scott, you don't need to get into that. Scott continued posting, though, and he eventually started to draw criticism when other people realized that the unfiltered Dilbert guy was a dick. This happened first in a big way when he made this 2011 post complaining about the unfair treatment of women. The reality is that women are treated differently by society for exactly the same reason that children and the mentally handicapped are treated differently. It's just easier this way for everyone. You don't argue with a 4-year-old about why you shouldn't eat candy for dinner. You don't punch a mentally handicapped guy even if he punches you first. And you don't argue when a woman tells you she's only making 80 cents to your dollar. It's the path of least resistance. You save your energy for more important battles. So Scott posts this stupid thing because he's a dumb asshole, and he gets made fun of on a blog called Feminist. And so he jumps. He can't handle people not agreeing with him or not thinking he's smart. So he leaps into the comments section to defend himself and argue against everybody. And immediately, because he's not good at arguing, he just kind of gives that up and starts insulting people for their poor reading comprehension. He also suggests that they all secretly agree with him and know he's right and are just arguing with him for the sake of their own egos. Then he makes a blog post a few days later reiterating all the points that had made everyone mad, but insisting that everyone had just gotten him wrong and that Dilbert readers are smart enough, but other people didn't get it. I'm actually going to read a quote from EW.com here, summarizing the fallout. Adams insisted that his post was some sort of forensic exercise that his loyal readers, he presents them as sort of uber-rational Dilbert nation, understand. But he did eventually offer an apology. To the best of my knowledge, no one who understood the original post or its context was offended by it. But to the women who were offended by their own or someone else's interpretation of what I wrote, I apologize. Thank you for making my week so interesting.
You chose to be offended by your own interpretation of what...
Yeah, it was all just a game from me, the puppet master, but I'm sorry if it hurt you. Scott, just look, if you want to believe shitty things, just say them on your massive platform and ignore the people who argue with you.
Say it with your chest.
Yeah, don't be a little baby about this. He's such a wimp.
Is this the time he made stock public accounts to defend himself? Or is that...
Oh boy, that's where we're heading to. So the attention, because this kind of goes viral, more and more people start to watch his blog posts and then they start to realize, wow, he says dumb shit all the time. He's constantly saying bullshit without knowing anything about the shit he's talking about. So in the mid-aughts, it kind of becomes sport in a couple places online to make fun of bad Scott Adams posts. And Scott can't handle it. So he starts to make fake accounts on Metafilter and Reddit under the pseudonym Planned Chaos, where he's doing this puppet master thing. And he pretends to be someone else defending himself because apparently his rational superfans aren't good enough to actually do the job for him. Here's an example of a Planned Chaos post. If an idiot and a genius disagree, the idiot generally thinks the genius is wrong. He also has lots of idiot reasons to back his idiot belief. That's how the idiot mind is wired. It's fair to say you disagree with Adams, but you can't rule out the hypothesis that you're too dumb to understand what he's saying, and he's a certified genius. Just saying. First of all, argument to authority. If you want to be a big fucking rules D&D for real life guy, that's the argument to authority. You're not actually defending yourself. That's evidence that you've kind of that whatever argument you're making is completely hollow because you have to rely on well, he's a genius. So you just don't understand him. But also that's just such a sniffly little wuss thing to do. Say it under your own name, you fucking coward.
Yeah, that's what bothers. Well, that's not the biggest thing about Scott Adams, but it's I have never understood making a stock public account to defend yourself.
It's sad. It's sad. It's weak. Anyway, whatever. Once Trump began his campaign for president, Scott's behavior accelerated. He predicted a Trump primary win. Fair enough. Gets that one right. And then he takes back his endorsement of Trump, though, after the Access Hollywood tape, and he endorses Gary Johnson, which he'll later come to regret and try to explain away, but it is very funny. Once Trump wins, he publishes a book called Win Bigly, in which he argues that he and Trump are both master persuaders, and Trump was ushering humanity into a bold new world with his master persuader techniques. He becomes increasingly partisan during the Trump years, but also increasingly silly and deeply irresponsible, would be fair to say. In 2019, you guys remember the Gilroy Garlic Festival mass shooting that was carried out by that kind of fascist guy? Real fucked up. Scott uses the tragedy as an excuse to publish a video app he's made called WinHub, which he's created as a news gathering tool. And he's while the shooting is going on, he's telling people to use this to report on what's happening. If they're it's pretty fucked up. There's a lot of debate in our culture about what it is and isn't appropriate to do in the wake of a mass shooting. But I think we can all agree trying to plug your app is not appropriate.
Yeah, that's a bit offsides.
Yeah, that's just bad. That's just real fucked up, Scott. A write-up in MSN notes. Adams didn't make major waves with a February 2021 comment that poked fun at those who received a coronavirus vaccine, but he did ruffle feathers when he espoused debunked claims that people who weren't vaccinated fared better than those who were in a video shared by the Just Think podcast. In the 2020s, his political statements also started to focus more on race. At the beginning of 2022, he tweeted that he was going to self-identify as a black woman until Biden picks a Supreme Court nominee, which the president had vowed would be a black woman. And then in June of 2020, Adams tweeted that when the Dilbert TV show ended in 2000 after just 2 seasons, it was the third job I lost for being white. So Scott's madness crescendos after the 2022 Highland Park mass shooting. This, like so many mass shootings, was carried out by a very young man, 21 years old. Rather than seeing this as perhaps a reason to explore more restrictive laws as to when firearms can be purchased, or perhaps as a sign of deeply toxic aspects of our culture and the things that young men in it are raised to believe, Scott posted one of the craziest things I've ever seen on Twitter, which is an app fueled entirely by mental breakdowns. Here's Scott, again in the wake of a mass shooting. The Highland shooting and every fentanyl overdose death among the young are teaching us the same lesson, and we refuse to learn it. It's difficult, but I'm qualified to give you this lesson, unfortunately. This won't be easy to read. When a young male, let's say 14 to 19, is a danger to himself and others, society gives the supporting family 2 options. Number 1, watch people die. And number 2, kill your own son. Those are your only options. I chose 1 and watched my stepson die. I was relieved he took no one else with him. If you think there's a third choice in which your wisdom and tough love along with government services fixes that broken young man, you are living in a delusion. There are no other options. You have to either murder your own son or watch him die and maybe kill others. There is a sad reality behind this. That's fucked up. That's real bad. First off, not true. Among other things, I did an interview when I was still working with crack at a young man who attempted to carry out a mass shooting at a school. This was back in the late 90s and got caught and stopped, thankfully, before he was able to shoot anybody. But he had the guns he was about to start. He was penalized, obviously. He was sent to a mental institution for a while. But it's been decades. He's a normal person. He's got a life now. He's hasn't killed anyone. You can, in fact, intervene in people who are going in dark directions, and they can be saved. It happens all the time. Part of why it doesn't get more attention is that a guy shooting up a school, obviously, is a thing that people are going to pay attention to all the times, every single day, in which a mentor comes across a kid who's starting to head under a dark path and convinces that person. Every time that a parent sees that their child is starting to embrace toxic aspects of belief and behavior, and starts to talk to them and starts to work with them and tries to understand and counsel them. Every time people get pulled back from that brink, it doesn't you don't get a news story about that, right? Obviously, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. It's kind of fucked up to say that once people start to show that they're fetishizing violence, they're embracing racist or problematic beliefs, or that they're starting to get addicted to drugs, that there's no way to save them. If you've lived a life, people who have been pulled away from all sorts of fucked up things, or who have gone too far down a dark road and pulled themselves back. It happens all the time. Not that it's easy or simple. These are terrible things to deal with as a kid. Having a child who you think might shoot up a school, it's a terrifying position to be in but people get pulled away from that kind of stuff. Now there is a sad
stepson. That is
well, that's what we're about to talk about.
Oh no.
So, it's a pretty sad story. Scott's stepson was involved in a serious bicycle accident at age 14. He suffered severe brain damage, which caused him to lose all impulse control, and he became terribly addicted to drugs and eventually died of a fentanyl overdose in 2018. This is a horrible story. There's a video in 2018 when Scott gets the news where he's just weeping to his audience, and I have no doubt that it's genuine.
I don't want to brag on him for losing a child.
No, I don't either. But number one, I think the 2018 video doesn't look to me like a man who like gave up on a child. It looks to me like a man who's sad because what he was doing didn't work. And I think it's very depressing that like the lesson he took out of this is that like you can't save people when they start to have problems. Obviously, everyone can't be saved. Clearly, Scott's stepson